advantage of. And that is my parents' good name. All right? My parents' good name is the reason why Michigan, one of the big reasons why Michigan is going to help me in the primary, but help me beat Barack Obama in the general. We win Michigan. We win the White House. From 2 debates ago, we were each asked what one thing we would bring back to the White House if we were president. And there were all sorts of ideas that people put forward. One person said they wanted to bring back a motocross, or bring to the White House a motocross track, and Harley Davidson motorcycle, and a lot of interesting things. I happen to say what I would bring back to the White House is the bust of Winston Churchill and put in the Oval Office. You know, I love the man for at least 2 reasons. One of course, was his courage and his determination is probably single-handedly responsible for garnering the will of the people of England to stand up against the threat they faced, and then to bring the world together in stopping the spread of fascism and Hitler. But secondly, he says such delightful things in such extraordinary ways. I love what he said about us. He said you can always count on the Americans to do the right thing after they've exhausted all the alternatives. So I'm bringing that bus back. And by the way, after I said that in that last debate, or the one before, I got a letter from Winston Churchill's grandson, who lives in the United States, and said he will help me get that bus back, and his family is anxious to see it back.
Say the biggest question people have about the campaign that we've heard, and especially I think those of us who are trying to get other Republicans to support you, is how are we going to answer the question about what Barack Obama has done on Obamacare, given your record of what you did in Massachusetts? Could you maybe tell us what your thoughts are?
And with regards to Barack Obama, the great advantage is this, which is he's going to try and say all these great things he did with Obamacare, and I'm going to say, Mr. President, we accomplished all that and more without raising taxes, without cutting Medicare by $500 billion. There's only one president in modern history that's cut Medicare, and that's Barack Obama. And so I'll say, look, your bill is awful. It raises taxes, cuts Medicare, it takes over health care for all the American people. That's why on day 1, if I'm president, I will direct the Secretary of Health and Human Services to grant a waiver from Obamacare to all 50 states. We will what's wrong with Obamacare, and I'll tell him in the debate. I'll say, Mr. President, why didn't you give me a call? I'd have told you it's a very bad idea. Other thoughts, questions? Please.
How do you intend to deal with the financial problems in Social Security?
Social Security is the easy one intellectually to solve. Politically, very difficult. All right? But and by the way, Social Security is fine for people who are today in their 50s, 60s, and retirees. It's just fun. But the question is, coming along, how do we make sure that it works for the people in their 20s and 30s and 40s and early 50s? There are 3 ways to solve it, arithmetically. One is to raise taxes. That's not going to work, because that costs jobs, slows the economy, and is self-defeating. Number 2 is to raise the retirement age for people coming along in their 20s and 30s and 40s. And number 3 is to say for people who are higher income folks that the rate of inflation in their benefits will be a little lower. That's again for people who are in their 20s, 30s, and 40s today. In my view, the combination of the last 2, age and retirement benefits for higher income folks, those are the ones that ought to be pursued. And so you're going to see those, I think, is the final proposal that comes out of this special committee in Washington. They're going to talk about that. Interestingly enough, we have a president of the United States who's been in 3 years, who says we ought to reform Social Security, and has not put forward any ideas as to what he'd do, which is really inexcusable. So I look forward to this being resolved in a way that comforts seniors, because anytime you're talking about Social Security, they don't hear the whole story. They just hear Social Security, which is their sole means of support for a lot of Americans. I want this resolved, and resolved quickly. Thank you. Yes, Steve?
Along that same line, Governor, how do you feel about, for the younger people, the freedom to make a choice of where that investment goes, to have some control over their own retirement instead of depending on us, the government, having it there for them?
Yeah, my own view is quite simply that for the middle income Americans, of which there are, let's see, I think about 98% of Americans make $200,000 a year and less. 98% of Americans. I'd say for all those Americans, they should pay no tax on their savings at all. That means interest, dividends, and capital gains. Let middle Americans save their money as they want to for education, for their housing, for their retirement. Let people save their money. And we don't have to have all these nanny accounts, the Roth IRA and the 401. Just let people save their money tax-free. And I would do that permanently for the American people. That's the best way for us to plan for retirement. Yes, Sam?
More importantly, how do you keep Congress from going in there and stealing the money out of Social Security every single time it becomes available? Right now it's not, because we're paying more out than we are taking back in.
Yeah.
If that should change, though, how do you keep them from taking that
Yeah,
money?
the truth is, I don't think anyone suggests that any time in the future we'll go back to actually having a surplus in the Social Security Trust Fund. So they've spent it all.
Yeah.
It would have been nice if they'd been investing it rather than spending it, but they spent it. And it's remarkable that we've all watched that. By the way, we blame them, but we keep voting for them. And so in some respects, our kids won't say, oh, why did you let Congress do that? They'll say, why did you guys do that? And I want to make sure that we preserve Social Security for our kids and for their kids, and the adjustments I talked about would do just that. Thank you. Yes, please.
How do you feel about the super committee approach to budget balancing?
It's a real nightmare. I am not, the super committee is a real problem. And I'll tell you why. Because if the super committee cannot come up with something where Republicans and Democrats agree, then we're going to cut our military and intelligence capabilities dramatically. And the secretary, I mean, even Barack Obama's Secretary of Defense, Leon Panetta, says the cuts would be draconian and put us at risk. So the super committee is in a real tight spot. And I know we have great Republicans on that committee, like Dave Camp, Congressman Camp, but boy, it's a tough job. And I sure hope they do the job well, because if they can't come up with something that's acceptable to the rest of Congress, then there are these automatic cuts that happen to defense and to our intelligence capabilities, which is, I think this was a very, very bad idea indeed. Yeah, thanks, Lana. Yes, I'm hearing.
Accepting questions.
I'm here. Oh, up there. Oh, yeah. I thought I was at Kmart. Attention, Kmart shoppers.
Blue light special.
Yeah, blue light special.
I was asking you if you would accept questions from the bleachers up here. But first of all, I'd like to express gratitude for your comments about Winston Churchill. He was my MP. I was very privileged to receive the book Believe in America.
Yes.
And it has a lot of good ideas for the next administration. Are you willing to sign your name to that book?
I not only will sign my name to it, I wrote it. So absolutely. Actually, it is written in the third person. I laid out the strategy, but some other guys helped write it.
Sign my book.
That's oh yeah, I see. Absolutely. I'll sign your book, and I'll make sure it happens. Let me tell you, we have a president right now who thinks we need a stimulus, and as we were going into recession, a stimulus, if it had been properly spent, might have kept us from going in. But it's too late now for a stimulus. I mean, we're going over the waterfall now, so it's like giving someone a paddle in a canoe as they're headed down the waterfall. It's a little late for that. We need a fundamental restructuring of our economy to make America the best place in the world for investment and growth and job hiring. We are not now. So it has to be more fundamental. That's why I've got 59 different steps I would take as President of the United States to get our economy strong again. Yes, sir.
What are you planning to do with foreign policy, especially in the Middle East, and how to deal with dictatorship still existing in the region?
Yeah, when I mentioned the President's failures in the Middle East, or actually in foreign policy, I was thinking in particular of the Middle East. And the reason I say that is that President Bush, as you recall, had the freedom agenda. And so Condoleezza Rice, for instance, went to Egypt and gave a speech in Egypt saying we need to have government in Egypt that is more representative to the people. And the people need to have their voices heard in the government in Egypt. And she put the pressure on Mubarak. And we pushed a freedom agenda among our friends in the Middle East and those that were allies of our allies in the Middle East. And then President Obama came in and he somehow wanted to retreat from anything that sounded like George Bush.
Oh, yeah.
So the freedom agenda sort of disappeared. And he went around the world apologizing for America. Greatest nation on earth. I will never apologize for the United States of America. And so now again, it's a bit like over the waterfall, which is we have the Arab Spring, which has erupted, and instead of being able to move in an orderly way to a more representative form of government, we have chaos, and we have very little hand. We can have very little hand because if we show any hand, why people will respond aggressively. And so at a stage like this, you stand with your friends and you do everything in your power to keep Iran from becoming the new superpower of the Middle East, and make it very clear that that's not going to All right, okay, a hand over here. Let's see. Oh, there's the person that went with the hand. Hi, Carla.
Two
Okay.
quick ones.
All right, I'll be quick and answer it. Yes. Go ahead, Carla. Go right ahead.
How do you stand on the fair tax proposal and getting rid of the nightmare that's IRS?
The fair tax would be wonderful. To go to a national consumption tax would be great. The fair tax, but I know you love it. But what I would say is that the current way the fair tax is structured would represent a huge reduction for the top 1% in income. Huge reduction in taxes for those, and an increase for people in middle income. So I want to look at how we can make a consumption tax work so that the top 1% continue to pay the same share they're paying now, at least. So I'm not. By the way, President Obama always characterizes our party as the party of the rich, trying to cut taxes for the rich. I'm not going to let him get away with that. I'm going to make sure that we point out that we want to keep everybody paying their fair share. I'm not going to raise taxes on anyone. And so a consumption tax is great, but my first step before we talk about a complete restructuring is getting everyone to be able to save their money tax-free. That helps middle-income people who've been hurt by the Obama economy. Thank you. Thanks so much. Yes, sir.
I'm a staunch Republican. I'm a good friends with the UAW chairman of one of the local plants.
Yeah.
One thing we both agree on is we're worried about the middle class because it's shrinking.
Yeah.
What will we do to save the middle class?
The best thing we can do to save the middle class is to make America the best place in the world for employers to invest. And right now, they don't think that. When you hear that General Electric pays no taxes, it's not because they're cheating. It's because they're moving their facilities elsewhere. All right? And why do they do that? Because it's more attractive for their investors to go elsewhere. And they will do that. They will not invest in America just because they're mostly American. They will do what, as fiduciaries, they think is the best way to get a return to their investors. And we have to make this the best place to invest for a new factory. We have to have entrepreneurs say, if I'm going to start a business, I want to start it in America. If I'm going to expand my business, I want to expand in America. And that's what that 59-step plan of mine describes. What we have to do to make this the most attractive place in the world for business to invest and grow. And if we do that, and we invest here, and new businesses grow here, we'll put more people to work. More people to work means better incomes for middle Americans. A job-creating machine is what this nation has always been, and I'm going to get it back to doing that for the middle class of this great country. You guys,